we're here today with a super treat of Jack and Jim Maroney. The Maroneys are part of the Maroney clan, longtime Arizona drag racers, and once again legends. The memories they've created for a lot of people over the years, the different cars they've been involved with, the people they've inspired to go racing, the people they've helped, is paramount to what makes them who they are. And glad to have you guys here today. Which
Thank
one's
you.
Jim?
The fat one on the left.
You're on the right in the
Oh, I'm on the right.
Okay.
You're on the right. See, don't even know where I'm at.
So self-deprecating as well. We appreciate that. So, guys, thank you for being here. We've wanted to get you here for quite a time, and maybe this is our lucky day to get both of you. Jack, how did you first get involved? What was your first interest to get you involved with racing? Where were you? What happened?
Well, I've always been interested in it, but I didn't realize till I was a married person with, this one is about a 2-year-old, that my brother, who was 13 years older than I, had raced jalopies out at Manzanita years before. And when the opportunity, he lived in Sierra Vista at the time, the opportunity came up that an Army boy had a little old dragster that he was wanting to get rid of, and he bought it and says, let's go drag racing. And that's the first I knew about his history of racing and his interest and my interest, and both our wives kind of went, oh, But we had a good time. We put a 4-cylinder Pontiac in that little 148-inch dragster that we bought from Joe Basco. Had a Mickey Thompson manifold on it, and I raced. I got to know Fred Rathman through the Forbes. Linda Forbes was the secretary at my office at General Electric at the time, and her husband Jerry was racing with Fred, and he had a 4-cylinder dragster, and so that's the route we went with the dragster because we had a connection there.
Well, Fred was the Fred Cesspool service.
Yeah.
He lived we're by 44th Street in Thomas.
Yep.
Earlier, in another story, I mentioned the first race car I ever sat in as a 5-year-old was that car.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Pontiac, Mickey Thompson Pontiac, and those are cool cars.
Yeah. Well, back then, AHRA, everything was AHRA in Arizona, but back then the 4-cylinder blown cars ran with the injected flatheads. And so it was quite a class, and they actually would let us put a little nitro in it, which would pick up about 6 miles an hour with, just a couple percentage, just pick up a little bit. So that was quite a time.
They're fantastic times. Even to me, that was very near and dear to me. I had no idea what I was sitting in. It was on an open trailer in their carport. And
Mm-hmm.
his daughter went within the same class, and I go, "What's that?" She goes, "That's my dad's race car. Do you want to sit in it?" Oh yeah, hell yeah! I was right in that thing, and I think that's what I credit for me really wanting to get my first getting bit with the drag racing bug was sitting in that car, not realizing where they drove it, what they did with it, but just the fact that I had the opportunity to do that. So that was your first car. Who was the driver?
I drove it. First drag car I'd ever actually been down the track in was that little dragster. First pass I ever made in it was in Sierra Vista, Arizona, on the road to Tombstone.
Charleston Road.
Charleston Road.
When I was in high school, we still marked it off.
Yeah,
So-
there was a quarter-mile mark, and at that time Sierra Vista was small enough. My brother was on city council, and so he called the sheriff and said, we need the road blocked off for a little bit. So that was my first pass in the dragster, and when that dragster had a Model B cast iron transmission in it, and a Model B cast iron transmission had the bell housing cast onto it. It had been hacksawed off and bolted through the nose of it to a Lakewood bell housing to make it legal, and you had to clutch it to shift it.
There was no clutchless shifting back then.
No, not at all. But the first time I drove that car on Charleston Road, when I hit the clutch, the pedal flew away from me. And so here I am going down Charleston Road, County Road, And the only thing that's going through my mind is, how am I going to stop this thing? I got no clutch.
The details will come later, right?
Yeah.
So you ran that car, had some good times with it.
Yeah, I ran it in Tucson quite a bit. Back then, it was easier to go to Tucson and run because they had a lot of Saturday night racing, you
Right.
know. The Huffs put on a lot of stuff. And I had a couple of stories I was telling these guys earlier about running Donnie Toya back in the days that he had the Willies that everybody knows about, you know. That little Pontiac had a chain drive fuel pump on it. About half the time, about half track, they'd throw the chain. And I had a few choice words from Donnie one night for throwing that chain across the front windshield of that
Oh.
Willys. But
Oh.
those were simpler times, you know.
Yeah. Well, that was the technology.
Yeah.
That's what
the
you
way
had to
it
work
went,
with.
you know.
So what year would that have been?
Probably would have been, I had the pickup is a 70.
Yep.
So it would have been 70, 71, 72, right in there. You know, so it's back when you still had fun.
When you're allowed to have fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the need for speed. You had you progressed.
The wife swears them down. Now, we dated in high school. She swears them down. I didn't know anything about cars until after we were married and had him. And so I guess I kept
Always
that
my
a
fault.
pretty good secret. It must be his fault, yeah. So, but she's put up with it for a lot of years, and she's enjoyed it as well.
You've had a number of cars.
Yeah, we went from that. We built a Vega funny car with an injected small block on nitro that we ran AHRA B fuel altered. They wouldn't let us run it at the fuel altered nationals because it had a funny car body on it, but it was a record holder. Had a few arguments about that in the day, and so then we put a tub on it. We ran it as a tub, and that Vega funny car, the first fiberglass work I ever did in my life, we bought it from Joe, can't remember his last name, had a pro stock car in Tucson. He was going to build a funny car, decided not to. We went down and got it. I brought it home and sawed it in half, because back then all the bodies were 120 inches. We had built a 113-inch car. So I sawed that sucker in half and shortened it.
A real fuel altered.
Yeah, well, it was a real fuel
Yeah.
altered dragster for suspension on the front of it. But anyway, so yeah, I learned a lot about a lot of fiberglass work and stuff. Later on, when we put the tub on it, I think I cut that tub in 7 different pieces to get it to fit because it was a street tub. Tried to make a race car out of it, put a tonneau on it and all that, you know. So
So you went from the dragster into the funny altered.
it was an altered,
Right.
but it had a funny car body on it.
Was that like similar to the Don Schumacher?
Yeah,
Stardust thing?
Yeah, it was
The winter
panel-
wagon?
It was a panel wagon. Only I shortened ours, and ours had a rear window in it. You could actually see all the way through it. And we had an engineer friend. You know, back then funny cars had a hard time on top end. They would get loose real quick. And an aeronautical engineer friend of my brother's that said, shouldn't make those things flat on the side, because as the air comes around it, it hits the side of the body, and that's what's making it do this. I said, how do you fix it? He says, well, make the body have a curve in it. So when we made ours, we put a little curve in it, and I went over 200 mile an hour in that car and never had a problem with it that way. So
And that's why Schumacher quit running the Vega panel, was because they
all
were,
over- yeah.
yeah, because they were too unstable,
Too
over
much
200
body,
miles an hour.
yeah.
So.
And he wouldn't listen to you. He didn't.
well, we weren't people to talk to at that point. You know, we were little guys.
Well, he get very colorful past he had, and he was a my way kind of guy. So who drove that car?
I've always been the driver of our cars until he took over. My brother got in our dragster. We had a small block Chevy dragster after the 4-cylinder dragster for a while, and I think he got in it one night, and that was all. I was always the driver. So whether I was good at it or not, I was the driver, you know. I can tell you some mistakes I made, I know that.
Well, those are all learning things.
Yeah, yeah. Back then, they let you learn, you know. Nowadays, you got to be a professional before they let you on the track, it seems like.
Well, you've been there though. You've done a lot. You have your passion for it. I know that you know, thanks to people like you, we have our good friend Bill Gusick still around. I remember he was down there when they were down there racing his dragster with a borrowed supercharged engine in it, and the roll pin came out of the steering shaft, I believe, to the top end, and he had an interaction with a telephone pole.
Yeah, we were running Bill that night, and back then IHRA or AHRA would only let you run, your index was a tenth less than the national record. We were the national record holder, but they'd only let us dial in a tenth under, and we could run about 3/10 under. And so I had learned to throw the chute out about half track, 3/4 track, and drag it through the lights in order to kill the ET on the car. And that was the night I guess I was glad I did, because I was in the left lane, and if you remember Tucson tracks at all, it was dirt up to the return road that was dirt road, and there was light poles in between the two. And as we went through the lights, and I'm stopping because I had the chute out already, here comes Bill in my lane, and then the dirt humps, and then it wrapped around the light pole. I went ahead and got out of the car through the top because funny car had a hatch. Was first one to Bill, and he was not awake. His brother Tom showed up about then. Tom was a big old kid at that point, and he grabbed the cowl of the car, ripped it off.
He did, yep.
And Zeus Stabs didn't mean anything, he just pulled it off. And it had a pedal clutch in it. Bill's unconscious, and I'm trying to push the clutch in and pull his leg out from between the clutch pedal and the chassis. Wasn't having a whole lot of luck at it. But yeah, like I said, simpler times. We're glad Bill's still with us.
Well, I was right there. I mean, I remember you doing that. I didn't remember it was you. I just remember all the hands going there.
Yeah.
I remember Tom ripping the cowling off the race car.
Yeah.
And a lot of people doing the right thing and to help Bill out.
You know, Bill, the only thing Bill was mad about that night was he had a brand new face mask on, and they cut it off of him.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I was the one that I drove his wife and family to the hospital, and I was so nervous. I was driving like like I was the ambulance, and she goes, "It's not going to do it. It won't be any good if we don't get there. Slow down." She was very calm about it. She was worried about him, of course, but I think she knew he was in good hands, and that's one of the great things about our racing family is that people care about each other, and numerous times somebody's running somebody else, and there could be a fire, and somebody's there running fuel cars, and guy gets out of his car and runs into a fire, grabs somebody else out of their car because he has the fire suit on.
Yeah.
He's better equipped to do that than most people. So, thank you. Thank you for that. Your family is just, you and your brother, and everybody with the Maroney name. They've been a big part of Arizona drag racing, and a lot of great memories of all the things you've done. Your fuel altered days. Any favorite tracks you like to go to, or do you remember any?
Oh, different. Quick story about fuel altered. We were at Orange County, and Johnny West, that I know everybody knows his name. And Johnny's pretty tall. Johnny was driving the sheep herder that night. We had a blown Chevy, but it was a booked-in show. The Huffs had put it together and all, and we were having a good time. And I had to run Johnny in the sheep herder, which I should have lost big time, but you know about drag racing. I never saw Johnny. And we got to the other end of the track and pulled off, and I got out and turned around, and Johnny was sitting behind me on the return road. And what happened? Well, Johnny was too tall for the cage, and so he had a little trouble steering. And when that car made a move, he had run in my lane. We went tandem down the track. Now, I didn't know it, but he said, "What do you mean, what happened to me? I've been in your lane since 600 feet."
Well,
So,
that sheep herder was a really tight fit.
yeah, it was tight, and Johnny's pretty tall. And,
Yes.
But that's one of my fuel altered memories, you know. So
So when the guy sitting next to you, you know much about him?
no, he's just a kid we picked up off the
Yeah,
street.
you,
You know,
you did good. Gave the kid a home.
I've got pictures. He's got a '70 Chevy pickup that he still has that I bought brand new.
I've seen pictures of that. That's
And
beautiful.
there's pictures of him when he's about 2 years old, sitting on the side of the pickup at Tucson Dragway. You know, so he was been around the track for a long time. Him and guys like Warsham and a few of those kids ran around the pits there for a lot of time. So he grew up with it.
There were trouble off the track before they got on the track. Right?
On the track, right?
So, when was the first time you strapped him in a car? What was his first? Jim, what was your first experience?
My first experience with a drag strip was my father's '84 Camaro Z28 that I took out to Friday night drags, and guess who happened to win the Gambler that night? And I show up to work a couple weeks later, and here's a fax, nobody faxes anymore, laying on my desk, circled with a note from my dad that says, "Do you have something you need to tell me?" And I think it was Drag News. I don't know who covered it exactly.
It was
but
a little newsletter thing they put out at the drag strip.
But he's
I
in
don't
Sierra
think it-
Vista, and I'm living up here. And so it was quite a surprise that Dad even found out. But it was his car, and so that was my first trip down the drag strip. After that, we built a little altered with an injected small block in it, and made an attempt at running super comp with all the electronic guys and that kind of stuff. And we did that for a short period of time and decided it really wasn't our thing, and we found a Sifka funny car that was for sale for the right price, and of course I'm not a little tiny guy and it didn't fit me, so that went over to Yancers and had a cage put on it immediately. In the meantime, I took that engine and put in the little altered, and I actually have a picture of that car going through the traps in Tucson, and the left front end still off the ground. The left side is still off the ground and going through the lights because it wasn't made for a blown motor of any kind. And so, but that was my first
How old were
attempt
you?
at it. 22, 23, something like that. This was early 90s. We had dabbled with dwarf cars at the Circle Track and Manzanita and prior to that. And so that's why I still have a little dirt in my brain now. But
Yeah, it's 2 sprint cars.
so we've done a little bit of everything. We ran Sifka for several years. 99, I think, is when we put that car together. And we did that up through the 2000s, a couple different cars doing that. And then, you know, growing up around the fuel altered, that was always my thing. So my first love was the fuel alters. So we put a little nitro in the tank and started playing with that with the fuel altered guys, and never looked back. I could go on and on, but
Well, now you're really saving me a lot of questions here.
Right.
No, so you grew up in Sierra Vista and moved up here?
yeah, exactly. I went to high school, grew up in Sierra Vista, and then after that moved back up here to be able to make a living.
So the Sierra Vista is known for 2 things: the Maroneys and the first McDonald's drive-in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
My brother built that.
Really?
My brother was in construction. That's how I wound up in Sierra Vista, was I bought into his construction company. And yes, he built the first McDonald's drive-in. And the reason why was back then the military would not let a soldier go into a fast food place in uniform. So in order for McDonald's to get the guys to come from Fort Huachuca down and eat, they put in the drive-through so they could go through in uniform and be able to sell to them. But my brother actually built that.
And that worked out pretty good for McDonald's too.
McDonald's made a big deal there, yes.
Yeah, that's a good history of McDonald's. And it's interesting. There's a lot of history in Arizona of McDonald's first, and that's a unique deal. And to know that your brother, was part of that.
Yeah,
Even
he was the general
kinds of-
contractor.
Was he like the maven there? I mean, if something got done, he kind of knew about everything
Well,
going on.
Back to me, and my brother's name was Ed, and he was 13 years older than I was, so we were actually raised as both of us only children, because he got married at 19, so we didn't have a lot in common until I was older. But he moved to Sierra Vista with the bank and later had the bowling alley, served on the
Town council.
town council. There used to be a meeting every morning at Sambo's restaurant with the chief of police and the contractors in town that you had to go to when you were there. It was a small town back then. We had one stoplight. He moved there in '62, I moved there in '74. It's not the same town anymore.
No.
But yeah, there's a lot of history in Sierra Vista with the Maroneys. I still have a nephew that lives there. So, you know.
And he was a racer as well.
Yeah, except he was what I learned later is he was mostly the money behind Maroney and Day. You know, he helped with the money, and Mike and I put the cars together, and I drove them. So, but he loved racing.
So, and Mike Day was basically the
Crew chief,
the crew chief,
mechanic.
yeah.
He and I built our first car from a bunch of tubing on the floor till the car, like I said, I went over 200 mile an hour in it. That was an interesting concept, and did a lot of glass work and cut a lot of tubing and fitting and stuff. But, you know. So.
How did you and Ed get tied with Mike Day?
Mike had a partner named Tom Stitz, and they had the Blind Faith Fuel altered, which was the injected small block. And they were young people that got married and had to split up, and we had a little dragster that we're having trouble with, and asked Mike for some help. Wound up getting rid of the dragster and getting rid of the altered, and Mike and I built the Vega. And that was the first car we had together. We had several cars after that.
That was a good partnership. Lasted a long time.
Yeah, Mike was, if you knew Mike was interesting fellow. He's gone now. But a lot smarter than people gave him credit for. But he and I, we just had a good time. We were a good mix. I was willing to do things, and he was willing to put up with me, and we got things done, you know.
Although Mike told me one time that the reason you drove was because you weren't any good wrenching on anything.
Well, that's true. I didn't know much. I had a lot to learn, but you know. So
Well,
Mike had input to him when he started too.
I'm going to tell you that you knew a lot, because when we were racing down Tucson with our altered one time, you kind of, in a nice, kind way, called me aside, and without trying to tell me something that like your know-it-all, you asked me about. So the car wasn't running right. It didn't sound like there was a problem with the mag, and you said it in such a nice way. It wasn't like, you were just helping us out,
Yeah.
and I know you probably do that for a lot of people. And we all learn, and the great thing I like about the Jack is that you shared your knowledge, and I always remember that. And we went back, and it wasn't the mag, it was the plug wires. Oh, and we didn't know we had to change plug wires off and on a Pro Mag, and did that, and fired it. It worked really good. But there are things that don't sell yourself short. You really you're great at racing. What you've learned, well, life's a learning experience. We learn every day, and the fact that you share that with other people, and you try to be helpful to other people. That's what that's part of your legendary status.
Well, it was a much simpler time, and they talk about drag racing being a family. Tucson was a real family atmosphere. We had a lot of good times. I brought up Johnny West, but back in those days, Johnny and Jim both had altereds. And I remember going up in the stands, and Johnny's parents were always in the stands. And they would root for us as much as they'd root for the boys, because we were all there together. Dumb things like being cold in Tucson. Tucson gets cold after dark. Back then, everybody used metal drain pans. And Johnny had put alcohol in the metal drain pan and light it on fire and danced around it to keep warm, Just dumb stuff that goes on. We just had a good time. We had a real good time, and we helped each other. Barry Norman, one night I saw him, he was over at the garbage can one night when the races were over. Barry, what are you doing? Oh, I got to go to Winslow tomorrow, and I burnt a piston, and somebody threw some in here. I got to have a piston. pulled pistons out of the garbage can to throw in his small block to go to Winslow to race the next day.
I love that. Barry was another great guy. I loved Tucson Dragway. I like going down there with the Goosicks with Bill Goosick, and out of nowhere here come Buck Ricker on his bicycle coming up to his parents ran the concession stand, and he come up and greeted everybody, and this a lot of it was really a family atmosphere down there.
You name Niver and all the Goosicks and Rickard and Norman and Finley and Barnes and all of that bunch. We were all having a good time, and everybody did their own thing, and it was quite a history in Arizona at that time.
And the history grew because we got, on your left, our right, we have another legend right there.
Yeah.
Jim, you take
Legend in my
who would have
own
known
mind.
that he took your passion and put it on steroids and ended up with a top fuel drag strip?
Yeah, he did a lot more than I did that way.
I really got close to Jim, got close to you with the Western Fuel Altereds, which is was a great organization.
Thank you.
Gave a lot of guys. There's a lot of alters in Arizona, a lot of alcohol type alters, and just nostalgia type stuff that gave a place to race, and you did a great job while that was in existence, and definitely got me more bought into it. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Want to buy a race card? No.
Right.
But you also, like you mentioned, have done sprint car racing. You've raced bicycles as a kid. You probably on the street. We won't talk about that, but I don't think you like being second off the line.
No, yeah. Charleston Road in Sierra Vista has some marks from that 70 Chevy pickup that from high school days, But
And your boat, you had a killer boat. And
yeah, and so we still have the boat. Anybody want to buy a boat? I got a balloon flat bottom if somebody wants it. But that being said, yeah, I've been honored to and through my business, being able to do a few things and check off a bucket list item or two. And I knew when I went into the Top Fuel deal that I wouldn't be able to run for the championship or compete with any of the multi-billion-dollar teams out there, but I got to say I did it. And
one thing I want to say is that people watch a baseball team or they watch a football team, and they have the multi-million-dollar player on there, and they have a lot of guys that make the minimum salary, but they're still better than most people just to be on that team. And the odds are probably stacked against you to win Indy. But you had a dream. You went for it. You had some good people come around and help you with the car.
Yep.
And what I also liked about it, you made it this typical to the Maroney name. It was family involvement.
Absolutely. I mean, it's always been about the family and the race cars for me. There's pictures of my daughter, who's now my youngest, who's 23, 24.
Or
When she's like 7, taking the clutch covers off the can on the fuel alter. But that being said, it's still that way. That's where we got back into running sprint cars, is because I've got 2 boys, and they wanted to do something. Like my older son said, he drove. We had a little injected front engine dragster, and he drove it a few times. He says, "Dad, I want to drive something sketchy." All right, well, let's see what we can put together. So we ended up going sprint car racing, and now the boys aren't interested in the sprint car. Actually, my youngest son Colton works for John Force Racing, lives in Indy now, and Preston isn't so much interested in the sprint car stuff. So I go out and run it every once in a while. They've got a senior group, which I kind of fit in with pretty good now. So.
Oh no! Do you think it's not so?
I know, right? But so we dabble with that, and then I still have 2 other drag cars in the shop that we're working on putting back together.
Rumor is you put the altar back together.
Okay, well, yeah, well, the fuel altered, it's back together, ready to go. So original plan was to run it at the Hot Rod Reunion next weekend, but we're not going to make that. But we'll run it a few times next year, and then I put another alcohol altar together for the kids to run if they want to. It's more self-sufficient than most cars we've ever had. it'll have a starter on it and everything, but hopefully we can get that car to run top dragster numbers, mid-sixes with it, so. Something to play with locally, and we're not done racing, but Top Fuel's done for me. So.
Well, you went after it. You had some great experiences. Made the locals proud of you, which we were already anyways. I think anybody that you can talk about it, you can do it, and you were able to do that. And the Lord blessed you with the ability and the means to do so, and the time in your life that when it was the best time to do it. Doesn't mean that's absolutely out of your life, because I know you well enough, but you're a typical racer. There's never in your vocabulary. It's not now.
Well, here's the thing. Terry Haddock gave me the opportunity, and I drove his car for a little bit and decided I could do it better myself. Whether or not that happened or not, I don't know. But, with the help of the local guys, my good friends, Kevin Knowles and Brian Kelly, Jim Dennison, Cornwell Tools. I actually had Cornwell Tools sponsorship before John Forrest did. But, with the help of my friends that were all volunteer, we were able to put a car together that was competitive, we felt like, at any point. And that's what I felt. When we pulled to the starting line, I felt like I had as good a shot of winning as anybody else.
You qualified.
So
Yeah.
we did qualify at every show we went to. I think we ran 23, 24 events with the car before it was gone. So it takes a lot more money than people can imagine.
Yeah, even if they could imagine, they just don't.
Take what you think it's
Yeah.
going to be and double it.
Right.
Because,
That's a good start.
so it's time to go back nostalgia racing and have a good time with the family, and
So
that's what it's about.
So you got your kids, and now you're a grandpa.
And now I'm a grandpa, and that's great.
Yeah, I imagine
That's
you and your wife, just are enjoying every moment of that.
we are. My wife actually posted on social media, the granddaughter walking through the shop, and she's walking through, you can tell, looking for grandpa someplace, and I'm over working on the car, but she's hanging on the engine stand that's got a motor on it, It's like, well, she's not gonna be afraid of anything, because nothing in the shop scared her, so we'll see where that goes someday.
Yeah, that's great. Those are great memories. And now, how many grandkids do you have now?
We have 13 grandkids, ranging from great-granddaughter's mother, who's 32. How old's Brandy?
32, yeah, I think.
To a 10-year-old. And so we kind of been through the gamut. They're all starting to get older. Activities you go to change. We go to a lot of volleyball games with a high schooler, and Little League games with a 10-year-old, and we have a good time. It's really nice. We live in Phoenix again. We came back from Sierra Vista to be next to the family because everybody was here.
Everybody gathered up here and you circle the wagons.
And so, it's really good.
Well, your guys' story is fantastic, and we could go on and on and on. People the places you've raced. It's definitely the fact that you guys, your family has been means a lot to Arizona racers. That's part of the legendary status. I know, Jack, that you probably are thinking I'm just nobody, but you're somebody. Your family, your involvement, the people you race with, the help you've given people, helps other people, and was very valuable to our drag racing family in general. And you should be very proud of that. Jim is no slouch. He's helped.
Jim's a better driver than I was.
Well, Jim.
First time I watched a pass behind Jim, I knew I was done.
Well, let me tell you, when we bought my altered I have now, the Twilight Zone altered, we went to Tulsa, and Jim was buying the trailer. I bought the race car, and he hauled it back. But I wanted to see it go down the track, and Jim wasn't sure about driving a car with automatic in it. So, yeah.
That car almost didn't come back with us.
He made a great pass. I think it went around 670 or something like that, and
They pushed the clutch in at the end.
Yeah, he's looking for the clutch pedal. Which
It's
was
a brake
great.
pedal, by the way.
Yeah.
These automatics, man, I don't know. So I about stood it on its head in the lights, 200
But we had
mile an hour
fun.
or whatever it was. But we had fun. It
Yeah,
was good.
and that was those are good memories, and he's helped me a lot, and just another guy that I can refer other people to when they need help and to do things. The Maroneys, the Wests, all the people that have been, we've been blessed in our racing family to have you guys involved. So I want to tell you guys, both of you are both Arizona drag racing legends, and we really appreciate you being here today, and thank you so much for your time.
Great. Well, thanks.
Thanks for asking us.